Hi guys, welcome back to my page and my channel. So I was inspired to do this video topic from a discussion that I had in my class today at my school. As you guys may or may not know, I'm in my second year of a PhD program in clinical psychology, and actually approaching my third year, you guys. I'm finishing up my second year, going into my third year, and before you know it, I'll be finished. I'm so happy, you guys. But I find that my experience, in this particular class to be quite interesting. I'm learning a lot about myself. I think more so than just application of theory to working with clients in a certain approach. Like, I'm really learning a lot about myself, and the class challenges me to think very deeply. And today we had a discussion where one of my classmates, who is African, I think he's born in Africa. He's African, but he has an English accent. So I believe that he spent some time in England, probably lived most of his life in England. As do a lot of Africans who are from, the continent of Africa, but, they live in England as well sometimes. And so he looks like he's African, right? But when he speaks, his accent, he has an English accent. And he was sharing his experience, you guys, which really touched my heart, because you guys know that my research is on Black identity development and implicit racial bias. Like, that is my primary focus for my dissertation and my research and even my clinical focus. And he was talking about his experience, actually in response to another student who is a Black student. She's actually from California. She's from America. She was talking about her experience in the program and how, let me just go ahead and get straight to it. So we have, different classes that we take, obviously. In one of our classes we take, it's called clinical interviewing. And so the Black student, female student, was talking about her experience in this class where we had to transcribe tapes. And the professor who was watching her video basically called her out and said that he thinks that she should smile more. Smile less, actually. He actually told me that he thinks I should smile more, but he told her that he thinks she should smile less and that she should articulate what she's thinking as opposed to just using this verbal expression. And so her defense was that, it's part of the African American culture. We use a lot of nonverbal signals to communicate. And so a lot of times, within African American culture, we don't even have to say that many words, or even say anything. Our facial expressions, our body language communicates what we're trying to say. And so in watching her video, that was his feedback. And she took offense to it, and she took it as though he was not really understanding the cultural context, for her expression, and that he was missing that cultural piece. Like, he didn't appreciate, her cultural, the context for which she was expressing herself. And so that basically spiraled into another discussion where another student who I'm going to talk to you guys about in this video, I'll just call him the African English student, but he was inspired to share with the class his experience, with the same professor. It's crazy. The same professor who also holds a very high up position in the program. He told us, I'm just going to tell you guys what he said, okay? And I think that the reason why I'm talking to you guys about this is because I feel like it's so relevant to the times that we live in, and it ties in very closely with my research interests. And so we talked about this in class, but it's more that I want to say on the topic, so that's the reason I'm doing this video. But in response to her experience, he said right after, because basically she told her story about what happened with her and how our professor had responded. She told her story. It was last class. And so he said right after that class, he went into a meeting with this same professor, and he felt that the professor offended him. He said that at the top of the meeting, before the meeting had even started, the professor, who is white, he made a remark. He basically was trying to mimic his accent, mimic the English accent. And so the African English student, said that he took offense to that because he just felt like it was inappropriate, especially being a professional. We're in a professional environment. It's like we have a certain expectation of people especially who are higher up, who are superiors. We have a certain expectation that they will be more professional, will basically kind of stick to the book and not kind of deviate in terms of how they interact with us and relate to us and so forth. So he said that the professor and him basically mimicking his accent, and then he went to go to say, oh, that's a bad English accent. The student, who was African, felt offended by that, He felt that the professor was picking on him because he's the only student in the class who has an English accent. So why else would he be making this kind of statement? Why else would he be doing that, And so the student, I think what happened was he internalized that statement and felt that it was a racist remark, right? He felt like the white professor was being racist towards him. Now, I want to really go into detail about this, and hopefully I'll have enough time to do it because I do have a meeting that I have to go to in a couple of hours, but I really want to address this topic in detail because there's so many different ways you can come at this, Me being an African American woman, I have my own personal experiences with interacting with, of course, with white people within this dominant culture we call America. And I always have to think, we had this discussion in my last class where it's like I made the statement to say that as African American, we are always struggling with the idea as to whether or not something is racist that a white person says, or is it us? Is it something within us that is making this assumption about what a white person says, and in our mind we're translating it as being racist, or is it in fact a racist remark? There's always this internal struggle, and I brought that up in class. And it's interesting that how we had that last class where the Black female student shared, her experience in dealing with this white professor. And then right after that class, this African English student had this unfortunate experience, where he basically got a taste of it and had to face this internal struggle within as to whether or not the white professor was being racist towards him, or is it something that he's dealing with. Now, in hearing what happened, because he said after that, he brought it to the professor's attention and told him that he was offended. And the professor basically responded saying, he kind of brushed it off, but he was like, I didn't know that it would make you angry. He used the word angry. And the word angry in and of itself, I think, was a trigger for this African English student. Because in class, he said, he got offended. He got even more upset at this encounter with the professor because he was like, I'm not an angry black man. And he felt that the professor was trying to label him as an angry black man. Now, being an African-American woman, I can see how that can make someone upset. First of all, especially, we talked about even in class, my professor, his response was how as PhD students, we have a lot going on. We don't just have studies, in our curriculum, but we have practicum. We have to see clients, and then on top of that, we're juggling our personal life. It's a lot going on for, within the mind of a PhD student. And so I think taking that into context, one also has to keep in mind that, okay, yes, a person has a certain level of stress they're dealing with, so who has time for jokes, right? Who has time, to play around like that? And I think where the joke became an issue is because who it came from. The joke came from a white man and towards, a black student. And I feel like anytime where race is a factor in terms of interactions, and in human relations, I feel like it's always going to be an issue, especially if for a person, for an individual, race is very, very salient to them. Their identity is very, very salient. And I think that it does matter the detail of the story that he said, that the fact that this situation where he had this encounter with the professor happened right after that class that we had last week. We were talking about, my black female student, our classmate. We were talking about her experience. And so the fact that we had that very involved, emotionally provocative discussion in class surrounding her situation with this professor, I think from that, obviously his sensitivity levels to racism were heightened. I think that a person becomes, for them, race is more salient when you have these encounters, or you have these discussions, that involve race where people are getting emotionally riled up. Your race is going to be very salient, not just your race, but the race of other people. So I think when race is more salient, meaning it's more of a factor, it's more in your conscious mind, you're more aware of it. There's this whole thing about, oh, people are colorblind, they don't see race. I think to a certain extent, race can be, yes, less salient or less of a factor. But for a lot of African Americans, race is like right there. It's very clear to us. And it's like we're always thinking about everything in the context of race and racism. So even, for an encounter like this to happen where a professor is trying to make a joke, I guess, trying to use his English accent, and he's trying to make the class laugh. But the person in the class, he's English, not only English, but he's black, and he feels offended by that, then we have a problem apparently, right? And then, the fact that the student went to the professor and told the professor, hey, this is how I feel. This is how what you said made me feel. I got offended. The professor took an extra step beyond that to say, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to make you angry. I think that right there is what made it an issue, an even bigger issue. I mean, it was an issue at first, like the student said in class, but even made it a more bigger issue when the professor, I think, used the word angry. It's almost as if, just think about in regular encounters, with your friends, or if you're in a relationship, right? And a person may be agitated, right? But all it takes is for somebody to say, oh, why are you getting mad? And then that will provoke them to anger. You get what I'm saying? Even if the person wasn't mad or angry, just by saying, oh, why you mad? Or I see you getting angry. It's like, okay, you're going to make a person angry, So I think in him saying that made him upset because it triggered a certain response. It triggered a certain thought in this student's mind. When a person thinks of, he knows that first of all, that he's black. So he's thinking, okay, I'm a black man. And then here a white man is saying that, oh, I'm angry. You put two and two together, you have angry black man. So that's what triggered in his mind. It triggered that response in his mind to think, okay, he's calling me an angry black man. Although the professor didn't use those exact words, in his mind, that's what came up. If you're being called an angry person, sorry, I didn't mean to make you angry, and this is coming from a white professor, and you're a black student, And not only that, but you're a black man, and then you just left a class where we're talking about racism. Race is like at the forefront of your mind. You're already kind of going into this new situation with your antennas up. You get what I'm saying? And so from that, the student interpreted that as that, okay, this man is calling me an angry black man. And we know that label, it's almost like a death sentence. It's not anything good. The whole stereotype of angry black man or even an angry black woman, those are very negative stereotypes that can be very offensive, because you think about what goes into that stereotype. You have an angry black man. It's nothing good. Just think of it. Think of an angry black man. You think of someone who doesn't have good emotional control, good emotional regulation, someone who is not intelligent, someone who is beaten down and oppressed and is helpless and is powerless, Obviously, if a black man is angry, he has a reason to be angry, right? Something made him angry. It is not that he was just born angry or born bitter. It's something from the outside within the person's environment that triggers this intense emotional response. And so to be called angry, or for someone to assume, oh, you're angry, and then you're thinking, it triggers this whole line of thinking and within a person to say, oh, they're calling me an angry black man. I can definitely see how this situation escalates. So from that, he brought that situation into class today, and he was telling us about it, and you can tell he was really bothered. And I got touched by the story because I'm like, oh man, this is like the story of my life, and then one goes to ask the question as to, oh, why black people pull the race card, this whole thing about pulling the race card, right, basically. And what this idiom is, basically, it's a phrase, it's a saying that people use when, mostly white people use it to say that a black person's pulling the race card, is to say that they are wrongly accusing white people of being racist. That's what pulling the race card means, to wrongly accuse a person of racism. And I think that it's unfair. I think that it's unfair because who's to say if a person is racist or not? Who's going to be the final judge, right? To say, okay, yes, that's racist. No, that's not racist. I think if within a person, if they feel that they're being mistreated, and then they feel that the mistreatment is stemming from race itself because they are a certain race and another person is a certain race, then for them, it's racism. You get what I'm saying? You guys comment below and share your opinion on this. Who is to make the final call to say if something is racist or something isn't racist? I mean, take, for example, the shooting that happened in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, with Saheed. A lot of people are saying that that was a racist shooting because they're thinking in terms of the global context of our culture and how white police have a bad reputation for killing white people, for killing black people, and for being quick to pull the trigger. When they encounter a black suspect who is supposedly dangerous or armed and dangerous, which he was neither. This man was not armed. He was not a threat to the community, yet he was killed because in a white person's mind, they automatically perceive black to be dangerous. So I think this issue goes really deep. We know where it stems from. It goes all the way back to slavery, even past slavery. And black people, I think, if we want to go with the idiom to pull the race card or to wrongly accuse or inaccurately make this interpretation, of a certain racial interaction, and black people go to make the statement to say, okay, that person's being racist, I think the act in and of itself is a defense mechanism. It's to protect oneself from being mistreated. because if for black people, just if you're white and you're watching this video, if you can just somehow be able to position yourself, put yourself in the shoes of a black person, who wears this skin, and we know all the negative stereotypes that go along with being black. It's not easy living in black skin, especially in America. And you position yourself in that, you can be able to understand how and why a black person will resort to the so-called quote-unquote race card. As at the end of the day, and people have said this over and over again with respect to race relations, but they say that we're coming to a time, which I think we're already living in, where the color of your skin is going to determine what side of the war you're going to be on. Because we are in a race war. There is a race. We cannot ignore the fact that there is a race war. Black people are being killed because they are black. Okay? That is a huge issue in our country. So when you have black people who have their guard up and they seem very defended against these interactions with white people, and then you may think that they jump to conclusions and assume that a person is being racist, hence why you say they pull the race card. Just think. White people, I think, and everyone needs to be able to be open-minded enough to think about this in a very careful and a very sensitive way, because I think it serves a purpose. The whole thing about pulling a race card, it serves a purpose. If you can identify something that is wrong within an individual or within an interaction with an individual, then somehow you can stop it, right? That's the thinking. That if black people can call white people out on their shit, we can stop it. I think the issue then becomes sometimes, because it's like, how accurate are black people in being able to assess a situation to see, okay, is this racism or is it just me kind of being very sensitive, to the situation, right? Or can't take a joke, or is it me as a black person having this very low threshold for white people to make jokes, of me, I think. Because if you think about it, had the professor been black and made a joke like that, would the student take offense to it? I wrestle with this, and I think that it's good to wrestle with this. Is good. There are benefits to asking oneself as a black person, is it me or is it them? Are they really racist, or am I tripping? I think it is beneficial, because just think, if for a black person, you walk around life and you walk around, in your environment, and we know that obviously white people make up the majority of the population in the United States, and there's no escaping, your interactions with white people. They're just here, So you're going to encounter white people, and especially if you're in an institution like myself, I attend a predominantly white institution, just all the way around it. A lot of the jobs are controlled by white people, right? So one has to come to terms with themselves, I think. I think the experience in and of itself of when black people encounter these weird experiences, and Cross, he actually was a researcher who basically pioneered the research on black identity development. He said that black people have these encounters, and when they do have these encounters basically bring them back to their race. It brings them back to who they really are. It reminds them who you really are as a black person and where you fit in. When you do have these encounters where you feel like a white person has slighted you, a white person has mistreated you, or has been prejudiced against you, that makes you question who you are, and where you fit in within this dominant culture. Y'all, this is really the nut and bolts of my research, you guys. And I said that it's beneficial because if one goes around life assuming that every white person is out to get them, if a black person takes the approach to say, you know what, to protect myself, I'm just going to look at all white people, have my guard up, right? And look at all white people as a suspect. I'm looking at all white people as a suspect of racism. That's almost like, in a sense, as we call it, reverse racism, right? If white people have this attitude that all black people are criminals or are dangerous and violent, then no wonder why we have these police shootings, because you got white people armed with these guns and with a badge. Yeah. If they have that kind of thinking, which a lot of people do, unfortunately, because that's their implicit racial bias that they hold within them, that has been shaped by their experiences growing up as a child, because we know it starts in the home, and then it extends beyond the home to the neighborhood, the community, and the media plays a role, politics plays a role, society in of itself is what socializes us and shapes these and beliefs that we have within ourselves with regard to our own culture and people who are outside of our culture. And if white people are doing that, look at the danger that can come from a white person walking around with that attitude that all black people are dangerous, are evil or bad. That's pretty, that's not a good thing, right? That's a huge risk for a white person to walk around like that, especially if you are a white person who has signed up to serve and protect our communities, So we know that it can go wrong if a white person has that attitude. But just think about, for a black person, if you're a black person and you have this line of thinking that all white people are out to get you, or all white people are racist, and every situation that you go into, you have this raised level of sensitivity. You have a heightened sensitivity to these encounters with white people, where a white person could just be making a joke, and you are the end of the joke, but you're thinking that they're picking on you because you're black, when it could just be that's just who that person is. They're just an asshole, or they're just, a clown who just likes to joke on people. It's not that they just pick on black people, but you can see the same person in another social context picking on other white people too. I think that it becomes a huge issue when we have those racial lines that are crossed, right? And it's like black people give other black people permission to joke with them and to call them names and to make fun of them. But then when it comes to another person who is outside of the culture, who is outside of the race doing it, then it's like, wait a minute, we don't give you permission to joke, And I think that, I just have to keep it real and be honest. Being an African-American woman, that is a struggle, because I think I've lived like that, not all of my life, but sometimes, I find myself slipping into that state of mind. And I think like I said, it usually happens in response to a triggering event, that happens in your life, whether you're exposed to all these media images of police brutality, or you just walked out of a very heated discussion on race, then guess what? Your sensitivity to these racial encounters is going to be very heightened. You're going to have a very low tolerance for any type of little racial bias against you, So that's the reason why I think that I'm so passionate about my research topic, because I think it can really help black people if they become more aware of what's going on with them internally, and how we process things, how we process these situations, these unfortunate situations that we've been exposed to and we've been flooded with by the media. You know, how it transforms who we are on the inside, how it affects the way we see ourselves as Black people, the way it affects how we identify ourselves with our race, you know, or we choose to say, you know what, I'm not Black because of all of this stuff. Sometimes it makes Black people feel more comfortable to de-identify themselves, you know, with the Black race, to say, okay, I want to be more integrative with, you know, my approach to life and to interacting with people from different cultures, because I think it takes the burden of stress. It takes, to a certain extent, but even still, I remember the same student who I'm telling you guys about, the English Black student, is very smart, well articulated. I mean, I love his accent. When he speaks, it's just like we listen, you know, because his accent is very strong, and you know, he just puts his words together very nicely. And for him, he said, I remember him saying that when he first started the program, you know, people were asking him, why did he dress up? Why did he always come into class, you know, dressed up? He's always wearing a tie, you know, dressed very professionally, which we don't really have to be dressed up coming to class. I mean, yes, you want to uphold a professional image, you know, even if it's semi-professional, you want to always present yourself in that way, given that, yes, we're PhD students, but we don't, it's not required that we come dressed up wearing a collar or three-piece suit and tie. You know, you don't have to do that. But he does come to class dressed very professionally, like he's going to work. And then he said that he remembered when he started the program, people asked him, why are you dressed up? You know, why are you wearing that? And he said that as an African man, as a Black man, he felt that he had to do that, you guys. When he said that, y'all, it hurt my heart. He said he had to do that because of people's perceptions. You know, in his mind, he knows that white people carry with them a certain perception of Black people, you know, just by being Black. Got nothing to do with nothing else, just by your skin color, you know. So he felt that, okay, if I wear a certain outfit, if I look a certain way, maybe I can cover up that. And when he said that in the class, like his reasons, rationale for dressing professionally every single day you come to class, I'm like, I wanted to say so bad what Jay-Z said. You still a nigga in their eyes. It don't matter. You get what I'm saying? It doesn't matter. Your skin, unless you dye your skin, you change your skin color, you know. Look what Michael Jackson went through, you know, and he still, I mean, the people still made fun of him. It doesn't matter. You still Black. You can come in with a three-piece suit, dressed very nice, very crisp, clean, nice. He got on nice shoes. This student comes to class dressed very well. You know, and it's good. I think it's good practice is preparing him for, you know, when he becomes a psychologist, because he's probably going to be still stuck in that same pattern, that same way, where, you know, I think it's good to dress nice, you know, to have a good look for yourself, right? Because like I say, first impressions are lasting impressions. So the first time anybody meets him, they're going to see him dressed very nicely. So that's a good look for him. But just thinking and hearing him talk about his reason for doing that and his rationale, I'm like, oh, he just hurt my heart, you know. But I can identify with that because I'm thinking, you know what? Same thing. You know, Black people all across the world, especially in America, we go through these same things, unfortunately, where, you know, we may not be in terms of dressing up, going to class every single day, but we feel like we have to do certain things and change certain things about us just to fit in, you know, or go up and beyond the call of duty, you know, just to fit in because we know we're going to be criticized, or we just think in our minds that we're going to be criticized or judged more critically, you know, because of our race, because there's this preconception, this preconceived notion that we think that white people hold within their minds about Black people, that we're just not good enough, you know. I mean, when you look at the research, and just read research studies, they don't portray black people in a positive light. That's why I feel like there need to be more research studies done on the African American population that actually speak to our strengths. Because when you look at the research across the board in almost every discipline, no matter if it's criminology, psychology, medicine, education, they paint us in a very negative light. It's like we're always at the bottom. It makes no sense. When you're talking about criminology, we commit the most crimes. You're talking about psychology and looking at intelligence. We score the lowest. And yeah, it just goes on and on. Looking at medicine and health, black people, have all these diseases and dying from diabetes. And it's just like, why? When it comes to talking about black people, it's like it's always bad stuff, and even in research. And so it's like no wonder black people think that white people gonna perceive them in a negative way, because look, it's already out there to begin with anyway. So this is a struggle that a lot of black people have to deal with. And I have a lot of things underway for the African American community. A lot of it is rooted in research that I am embarking on. You guys can go to my website at bihapi.org, spelled BIHAPI.org, to learn more about it. But, it's research programs that I'm developing. I'm actually in the process of developing an app for this organization that I've created, and the name is an acronym that stands for Black Identity and Health in African People International. So it is a huge project that I am embarking on. I just launched it Black History Month in February of this year, 2018, and it's getting some momentum slowly but surely. But I feel that there's a lot of work that needs to be done within the African American community, within our minds, within the way we think, within the way we process these situations, all of these things that are happening in our society that make the news, that get black people specifically, all up in arms. So a lot of stuff going on, and I feel like a lot of times we don't get to thoroughly process these things. We just end up living with it and stuck with it. I have to position myself to get more comfortable, but and I feel like the more we sit with it, and especially if it's not processed, the worse it gets. We have to be able to come together as a community and really talk about these things and strengthen ourselves. And the fact that a lot of black people, for them, success means integrating with white people, we have to understand that does do something to our psyche. That does have an effect on our mental health and our sense of well-being. For black people to have to almost give up parts of who they are, their identity, in order to fit in with this so-called dominant culture. Dominant only being dominant in numbers in terms of population, not necessarily dominant in anything else, but dominant in population numbers. That's the reason why white people are considered the dominant population. And so black people kind of internalize these feelings of worthlessness and like you're not good enough, because if we were good enough, we would be able to stand on our own, right? We'll be able to build our own community and be able to thrive and survive. There's nothing wrong with multiculturalism, but I think it can be a problem if that is your only way. If that is the only way to succeed in life, especially when it means depending upon your oppressor, a group of people who have oppressed black people for many, many years, and that African Americans were descendants of slaves, so that it's going to really impact us even more. Just the thought of having to depend or go and beg a white person for anything. I mean, even he mentioned this in class to say that, because the professor, he was like, okay, so what are you going to do about it? What is the solution? And he suggested that he basically approach the white professor who he felt slighted him and say that, hey, I felt offended. What you said really hurt me. And I want you to, see me for who I am and to really have respect for me and to help me, move along towards my goals. Because it's not only that he's his professor, but he's his dissertation chair, which is really important, you guys, because whoever you choose as your dissertation chair means that you're going to be working with this person one-on-one for 2 years, you guys. That's a really long time. I just selected my dissertation chair. So the person I selected, I'll be working with her for 2 years one-on-one on my dissertation project, which is a huge project, you guys. This is basically what grants PhD students their PhD. They have to propose a dissertation topic, and then they have to complete the study, carry out, it's a full-blown study that they, carry out, design, you go out recruit participants, and you collect data, you run the numbers, you analyze the data, and then you do put it into a write-up and you publish it, and we have to defend, our topic, our thesis. It's a really huge and important project, and the fact that, he's having this issue, I think, it really says a lot. It speaks to a lot of issues that a lot of African Americans are dealing with. He's just more vocal about it, and he's open and honest and telling us about, how he feel and what happened. But unfortunately, a lot of Black people go through the same thing, yet they suffer in silence. They don't want to speak up. They don't want to talk about how their white boss made them feel very uncomfortable, something that the white boss said. I mean, even just recently, I got a text message from one of my classmates, the same Black girl who I was telling you about earlier, who said that the same freaking professor, you guys, who spoke to her but called her by another Black student's name, and that seems to be a common issue, where white people somehow think Black people are all the same, so they get us mixed up, I guess, and she looks nothing like the other Black student whose name he called her by, but unfortunately he called her by that name, and it's just like, come on, are we not people? Do we not have our own identity? Do you not see that we're different? Do you not even take the time enough to be able to get to know us as Black people? But when you look at the same professor, he knows every white student's name. I've never seen him mix up any two white students and call one white student by another white student's name, because that means that he takes the time to get to know who these students are. But if you mixing up, the assumption is that you mixing up Black students' names, then that means you didn't even take the time to get to know me. And then not only that, this is a professor whose class we took for 2 consecutive semesters. So we had a whole year-long course with this man, not just one, but actually 2, because he taught another course. And it's like you don't even know a person's name. Not only that, when I say he's one of the higher ups in the program, like, might as well say he's the director of our program, and he's not even knowing who students are. Like, that can be pretty offensive. Like, how do you not know my name? And there's not that many students in the program. You get what I'm saying? It's not like he has, hundreds of students' names he has to remember. He doesn't have that many students' names that he has to remember. But one could look at that as, okay, well, it's common, people mix up people's names all the time. I know me personally, I'm not really that good with people's names, but if I don't know a person's name, I'm not going to even attempt to pretend like I know your name. I'm just going to say, I don't know your name. Can you tell me your name again, But to call one person somebody else's name, like, come on, dude. Don't make that kind of mistake. That can be very offensive. So moving forward, what I would like to see for the Black community is that, of course, never let your guard down, because that's just the times we live in. I feel that defense, white people call it pulling a race card, but Black people call it just simply being smart and calling things as they are, calling it for what it is. That's what Black people call it, but white people call it pulling a race card. And it's just really a matter of defending oneself, protecting oneself from a potential act of racism, which we know, like, historically, and even till this day, Black people, again, like I said, are being killed because of their race. So this is a life or death matter we're talking about, you guys. This ain't just, oh, well, you black, so you can't have no ice cream, type of little petty stuff. This is, you're black, so let's target you and kill you. We're talking about survival things here. When it comes down to survival, that is a big deal. So when people are reacting or acting things out in terms of their own survival, it's like it makes perfect sense why a black person will be guarded, why a black person will have such high sensitivity to these issues here. They're very sensitive to these encounters with white people, and what they say. Listen, black people tend to listen very closely to what white people say because, I mean, come on, if you're a descendant of a slave and within our society white people are killing black people left and right, then you're going to make sure, I mean, this is just something that happens on a subconscious level where black people may not even be necessarily aware that this is happening. But as a black person, you're going to be, this is human nature. Think about it. Think about this, you guys. You're going to make sure that you are guarded against that you are protected against any perceived or potential threats of the quote unquote enemy. Because you don't want to be killed. You don't want this white person to attack you or to mistreat you or to do some harm to you. So I think a lot of black people kind of carry that in the back of their minds. It's like, you can't really trust white people, quote unquote, because of the things that have happened to black people historically and that are continuing to happen to black people. So there's always this thought, I think, it's for black people where race is very salient in their mind, meaning it's at the forefront of their mind. They're kind of always thinking about it. Yeah. They're always thinking about it. They're thinking, they have these encounters, and if a white person says something and they take offense to it, it makes them feel a certain kind of way on the inside. Yes, black people kind of wonder, like, damn, is this motherfucker racist? Is this motherfucker just try me? I told my professor that in class. I said that, yes, even myself. I ask myself that sometimes now. Even with my supervisor, and I've told you guys certain situations where my supervisor where I work at the clinical site where I work, he said certain things. He'll make jokes. He made a joke about, because he went to school in the South. That's where he did his PhD. He made a joke one time saying how when he was a PhD student, of course, it's not uncommon for students who are in school, college or graduate school, to struggle financially and have to kind of stretch their money to make ends meet. And he said that he was on the phone with the light bill company because they had turned his lights off because he didn't pay the bill. And he said the lady on the other end of the phone, obviously, I mean, he didn't have to say she was black, but it was clear just the way he told the story. He kind of gave it away that he was talking to a black person on the phone. But he was telling her that, what did he say? How the story went? He was telling her that, he didn't have the money to pay, and she was like, you have to basically pay the bill. That's the only way you're going to be able to get the lights turned on. And then he was just like, well, I ain't got the money to pay. And then he kind of like, in a jokingly way, he tried to make fun of the situation by telling me that, okay, she must be tripping, thinking that he had the money to pay. And so he goes to say that she must have been out in the field too long. He was like, yeah, those people down in the South, I don't know what's wrong with them, but they must have been out in the field too long, and he was referring to the lady he was talking to on the phone. So I'm like, yeah, she had to be black, but he's telling this story to me, I guess thinking I'm going to laugh or think it's funny, and I don't know. To me, it wasn't funny, but it wasn't just me in the meeting because, we have group supervision as a group, so it's another student there and she's white and she's laughing, thinking it's funny. And I'm just sitting here like, come on, really? I didn't really think that joke was funny, talking about, oh, maybe, you've been out in the field too long. And in reference to the girl who was talking to, who was working at the light bill company when he had called in to try to get his lights turned back on. And I'm just like, really? To me, I like that's so offensive, but it goes to show you people's frame of mind. It goes to show you the way people think. And just as black people have a certain perception of white people that has been shaped by, their upbringing and their community, their environment, white people do too. And you think this stuff would not come up in a professional setting. You don't expect it to see it. Let's say, if you're working in a hospital or, you're in a certain institution, you don't expect those things to come up like that. You expect that these people are more educated and they're more aware, self-aware, of themselves and who they are. But nah, this stuff slips out, and I think it slips out even more because at that level, they're already doctors, right? They already finished school, been licensed for many years, and made a lot of money, from being licensed. So I think they feel they have the liberty to kind of be more of who they are and be themselves, and you see it coming out. It's just like, what in the hell make them say certain things? And that's not the only thing he said that I felt was kind of racist, but he said other things too. And a lot of things I kind of just pushed to the back of my mind. I can't even recall right now. I have to really think hard to remember what other things that he said that I took offense to. Because he said several things, and I'm just like, dude, that's racist. That is racist. But, like I said, moving forward for black people, sometimes it's best for us not to be so consumed with stuff. Even my professor, he put this way, he was like, know which battles to fight, because we already got a lot of shit on our table as it is. You get what I'm saying? Like, being a PhD student, I'm doing this full time. Like, it's a lot of work. It requires a lot of focus and attention. And, like, who has time to fight the political shit that's going on, and even people at my school, the higher up, say, oh, well, you don't want to get involved with the politics of this school. And it's like, yes, not just of that school, but politics, period, can be really tricky. That's a really dangerous thing to get involved with, People get killed. Politicians get killed, Just stepping into that arena, politics, period, can be a pretty dangerous arena to step into. So, of course, one should be careful, but it's just like, why should students have to step into it in the first place anyway? That's what I'm looking at it like. Unless, it's a more of a proactive role that they're taking, to make things better for the student body. But when you have students having to respond to certain situations where they're feeling mistreated or feeling got offended by a certain situation, it's like, why should they have to initiate a certain political fight against certain things, that they're experiencing? I feel like it's unfortunate. It's unnecessary. I feel like it's necessary, yes, but it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be that way. I mean, students should be able to go to school and just focus on that. You shouldn't have to focus on, okay, let me fight for my rights as a black student so that I'm treated, respectfully and equally to white people. And it's just, to me, it's like, how long does this fight have to last? Like, you think that, okay, they fought the fight for us during the civil rights movement, right? And it's over? No, it's not. It's not over. It's like black people, like that saying goes, all my life I had to fight. All our life, and even after we die, it's like the black community is still going to have to fight. Why do we have to fight? Just to be treated with respect, just to be treated for who we are as human beings, And it's, to me, the whole idea of fighting to become equal to white people is like, I don't want to be equal to nobody. We black people, we stand alone for who we are. We are our own culture. We are our own race. We have our own identity. We don't have to be equal to anybody. We won't compare ourselves to nobody. We'll come second to none. We are a very powerful people, so we don't have to try to measure up to white people. We should not have to, But in America, apparently, there's this fight for equality, and it doesn't just stop at in certain institutions, it's, it continues on even through the down through the individual level, just dealing with regular human interactions with white people. It's like black people always constantly have to stand up for themselves and correct a white person and say, hey, watch out or don't do this, because it's almost as if white people, they have a certain way that they, I don't know, in their mind, their mind has been shaped a certain way to look at black people in a certain light, and so that's how they treat us. You have some white people will step on a black person's foot and don't even say nothing, will bump into a black person as if they just an animal, who don't even deserve an apology. And then you have black people feel like, okay, well, let me just stand up and correct this black person and say, well, excuse you, I'm here, I do exist, do you not see that you bumped into me? And I think, like I say, the lines can be very blurry because it goes to the question as to, is this did a white person do that intentionally because you black, or is that just simply, a mistake, just a human mistake? That ain't got nothing to do with a racial thing. It's just human. People accidentally step on people's shoes or bump into people all the time, and don't say excuse me because for whatever reason. So, but I think automatically, like I said, black people, we have our guard up, we on edge, and we just like we kind of expecting, white people to treat us a certain way, I guess. So when we are done wrong or when we're slighted, we just automatically say, you know what, it's because we're black. And I think, like I say, that can be a problem because if we take every single encounter that we ever had and take out a piece of paper and a pen and write down, if you can think, you got good memory somehow, and compile a list of every single negative encounter you've ever had with a white person, you personally. I'm not talking about via the media, I'm talking about you in real life as an individual that you've experienced, and you take out analyze every single situation, every single encounter that you've ever had that was negative with a white person, and you analyze it. I'm thinking maybe perhaps it's not because of race, but I think that's a very difficult question for a lot of black people because black people just don't know. If all they see is race, you see, okay, that you're black and that person who has potentially slighted you is white, you automatically think it's because you're black. Automatically. When it ain't got nothing to do with your race. That's, I think, where I am seeing myself growing. Like I say, this class I'm taking, psychodynamic, is really challenged me to think more outside of the box and really to look at myself, develop more of an awareness of myself as a black person, and to be less quick to react and more prone to just respond. I mean, I actually take time to think about certain things before I just quickly jump into it and react. Black people, we quick, man. And I think it's more of an adaptive mechanism that we're quick, because it's about survival. It comes down to, hell, we being killed because of our race, then yeah, we're going to be quick to respond. So yeah, if a white person says something, even if it's just a verbal statement that they make, like people quick with that shit, so just imagine if some shit was to go down physically, good luck white people, because black people already got in their mindset like, hey, ready for war, right? Ready to throw down, so just prime example, I mean, I shared on my page where I think it was inside a T-Mobile store, some cell phone store, where you had two black women, you had a white woman, and the white woman had said something. She got upset with the black ladies for whatever reason. All these three were customers in the store, and the white woman, all it took was for her to call them a black bitch. She called black bitch. That's all it took. Just 2 words. And it's amazing how words can trigger a certain response, right? And we used to say when we was growing up, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Yeah, I guess y'all can take that back now because words do hurt, right? So that's all it took for this white woman to say black bitch. And I can't even get it out, y'all. That's all it took, and those black girls went in on her. They tore her up, real quick, and then they ran out of the store. Now, that doesn't justify their behavior to say, okay, what they did was right, but I'm just trying to break it down to you guys so you can understand that you're talking about a reactive people who don't hesitate. You get what I'm saying? Automatically in their mind, they just think racist. They think survival. They think, okay, this is the enemy. I'm looking at the enemy. Because historically, what have white people done? Killed black people just because of their race. And so you're talking about a white person who is saying, anything racist. Even if she just said black bitch. I don't even think she said nigger. I think she said black. But all it took is just a black and bitch. And that was it, and they snap. You get what I'm saying? Not to say all black people are reactive. So I'm kind of, speaking in general terms. It's not to say all black people. A lot of black people have a lot of restraint. We're not so quick to respond and quick to, cut a motherfucking head off. But you do have those handful of black people who have a very low tolerance for that shit, a very low tolerance for racism. If they suspect that a white person is being racist or mistreating them, they ready. They ready because I feel like it's more of an adaptive response or defense mechanism. Because just black people, I guess, are tired too. They're tired of the mistreatment, of the discrimination, of the abuse, of the killing, just tired and just, it's almost like just ready for war. They're ready to snap back, they're just very guarded. And that's where my work comes in because I want to make, black people more aware of these things, educate black people to become more cognizant of these situations and to be able to analyze for themselves in such a way that makes them less reactive, and makes them, not to say that, okay, you excuse white people for being racist or being cruel. No, of course, you're always going to have an open eye out for those kinds of things. But it's about your response to those kinds of situations. And it's not only that, but how you interpret it, because I do feel to a certain extent, sometimes, yes, black people do pull the race card. That means that they wrongly accuse white people for being racist when it may not have had anything to do with race, but they don't know what else to blame. Like the saying goes, you gotta blame somebody. So in this case, you gotta blame something, So what other reason why a person will mistreat another person, if you can't think of anything else and you say, okay, it's race, that's the only difference I see, right? But you have to be able to take the time to look at the bigger picture to see, what's going on. And then let's say, even if it is race, right? So in the case of my classmate, the black English student, let's say the professor does have some bias against black people, right? Which all white people do. Everybody got bias. That's why I can't wait to share the results of my research study with you guys, because we're seeing it as young as 4 and 5 year olds. They have a bias. And for the most part, as black kids have a bias against the black race and in favor of the white race, and we know the same goes for white kids. They already have that negative bias against black, and pro-white bias, essentially. It happens at a very early age. So just imagine by the time that we're adults, all of these conceptualizations, all of these stereotypes, all of these cognitive schemas that have been shaped in our mind, that have been developed over time, that just sit there and lie dormant. And then all it takes is a certain trigger, for those things to come up. And seeing, my professor respond to that student in that way, it's just like, yes, it's unfortunate that it happened, that, he said that he made a joke, about the way he speaks on his accent. That's not even, right to do that. And I feel like I asked my classmate, I say, so why did you choose him as your dissertation chair? And he said, well, I think that he, his research interests align with mine, and I thought he was going to be a great person to work with. I thought he kind of understood, my research interests, because, we have similar interests, and he was going to be very supportive of me. And I've taken classes with him. I'm like, okay, you're taking classes with this man, so that means his personality. It don't take long to be able to get an understanding of a person's personality style, right? It don't take long, right? And he's taken several classes with him, so he knew his style. He likes to joke, but I think, like I said, I think what it was because he had a higher sensitivity. Sorry, you guys. I think what it was because he had just left that class, like I said, where we were discussing my other classmates, the black students' experience with the same professor, which raised his sensitivity levels to this racism. That's all it takes. When you have a heightened sensitivity to certain things, yes, it can be you can take the smallest thing. Somebody can just joke with you, really, the smallest little thing, and it can trigger something in you. But if for people, and you got black people, I'm sure, who may be watching this, for whom race is not as salient, it's not at the forefront of their mind. They probably ain't even thinking about it as much. They got something else on their mind, so something may happen, and they may not even think nothing of it that a white person does. Whereas if a black person, is struggling with these thoughts that they have been exposed to through the media, and they just left a heated discussion on racism, then hell yeah, your antennas are up, and even the smallest little slight of it, you're going to be able to detect it. So I think that's essentially what happened in his case, and that's why he felt, very offended. And I think he took the right approach to bring it to the professor's attention, to say, hey, this is how you made me feel. He told him I felt offended, but it really made my classmate, the black English student, even more upset when my professor assumed that he was angry. I saw it took, okay, well, I didn't mean to make you angry. And then, if y'all know this, like, y'all know who I'm talking about, my professor, but if y'all did, like, y'all see, like, he likes to smile. This man smiles a lot, y'all. Like, when he speaks, it's like, you'll think he kind of like making a joke out of stuff, because he got his smile on his face. And so I think for the student, it wasn't a laughing matter for him. But it's almost as if it appeared that way when the student is listening to this professor talk, and he's just like, oh, well, kind of brushing it off like it's nothing, in a nonchalant manner, saying, I didn't mean to make you angry, I see that you're getting angry. And y'all, I'm going to tell y'all something. This is just something that is consistent with a lot of psychologists. Like, that's just in our field. Unfortunately, our field is driven by pathology. So they always looking for something that's negative in a person. You get what I'm saying? They're always trying to point out the worst or the bad in a person. And that's what psychologists are very good at, very good at finding what's wrong, as opposed to looking at the big picture and looking at, everything in its totality, and looking at, what's right with the person, and just focus on what's wrong. And like to exacerbate shit, like to kind of make shit worse than what it's supposed to be, almost to trigger you into a certain enactment, in a sense. So I think that it seems like that's what my professor, this man, like, he did with the student. Like, he didn't have to do that. I feel like it's just to take it to the step of anger, to say, oh, well, you're angry. It's like, no, if he's telling you he got offended, he's offended. He's offended, or it could be hurt. But to say he's angry, I can see why he would take offense to that. And then how my classmate interpreted it is that, okay, he's being called an angry black man because number one, he's black. So that's more of subconscious communication because it's obvious that he's black. And then, the professor's saying that he's angry, put two and two together. Okay, you're calling me an angry black man, you know, which is not a good name. Nobody, I don't think no black person wants to be perceived as an angry black man or angry black woman, because it's a whole negative stereotype that goes with that. And it's almost as if, okay, if a person is angry, it's like, to me, just seeing how my classmate was so quick to deny the anger goes to show how unfortunate it is that black people can't even be angry, because it's almost like we're denied that one emotion. That for a lot of people, I mean, it's a human emotion, it's natural. It's only natural to feel anger or bitterness or, rage or whatever. But it's almost as if, okay, black people ain't allowed to be angry. And if you are, then it's like, watch out, watch out for this person because they're angry. And so in response to that, my classmate was saying that, he wanted to call a meeting with the professor, but not by himself. He said he would rather have a higher administrator up, in the program who is present to protect himself because he doesn't want this professor, the white man, to misinterpret anything that he says, because he's looking at it this way. He's like, okay, if this professor misinterpreted my emotion, even though I articulated myself and told him that I'm offended, but he interpreted it as anger, then what else is he going to misinterpret, He might go and run and say, oh, well, I said this when I really said that, and making worse of a situation than what it needs to be, And it's just like, who got time for that? Motherfuckers, we trying to finish the program. We trying to get out of the program, get our degree, get licensed, and become doctors. Nobody ain't got time for all this extra shit that's going on. But it's just like, this is unfortunately part of the process. This is stuff that black people have to deal with, unfortunately, living in America. And so that's the reason why I wanted to talk to you guys about this. Probably may do a part 2 because, I mean, like I said, this parallels my research interests, and I just feel like I want to see the best for the black community, and I just hate when situations like this happen and black people got to be questioning and wondering, oh, well, am I being treated this way because I'm black, or, did I do something wrong? Is something wrong with me, And it's just like, that's not healthy, because all it does is that it creates this negative internalization of feelings that for this black person, So it just adds a whole nother layer of negative thinking that this black person internalizes about themselves, It's not good. Because it's almost as if every time, let's say this one black English student that I'm talking about, every time, let's say he does become angry in a context that's totally unrelated to this situation, he might think about that and think about, okay, well, my mentor, my professor, was criticizing me for being angry, so maybe I shouldn't be angry. It's just like, come on, this is bullshit. Everybody has a right. You have the right to be angry. You have the right to be happy. You have the right to be sad, depressed, lonely, whatever feeling that comes up for you. You have that right because you are a human being. Nobody can judge you or criticize you because you feel a certain kind of way. You have a right. If something makes you angry, you have a right to be angry. So what if he was angry? So what? Why do he gotta deny that that made him angry? Because he don't want to be perceived in a certain negative light. It's like, that's fucking bullshit, when initially the issue ain't even about the student. It's about the professor and what he said, the comment that he made that was offensive. Professors do this all the time. I feel like when they feel like, I guess they feel comfortable around students or whatever, they're like, okay, well, I can crack some jokes and make fun of certain students or certain aspects of, students and stuff. And it's just like, come on, you got to be careful. I don't know. It's a very fine line, I guess, that you have to walk, especially as a white person and interacting with black people. Yes, you do. I will be the first person to tell you. You got to be walking on a fine line. I think white people, from their perspective, they probably like, I ain't trying to walk that fine line. You know, who got time to be walking fine lines on tight ropes around black people? You know, they just want to be themselves and be able to, I don't know, just be themselves, I guess, without having to think, oh, well, how is this statement going to affect this black person, you know, or is this going to be offensive to, you know, this black person, even though it's not even necessarily a racial remark. But I think, I don't know, given looking at the behavior, looking at what he did, he actually, I mean, let's say the guy wasn't black, the student wasn't black, right? Just the mere fact he's making fun of a person's accent, you know, that's still not right, you know, right? Like me being from the South, you know, personally, I don't think I would take offense because I mean, I've lived in New York and I got it. I feel like living in New York has prepared me for all kind of shit. You get what I'm saying? So, like I said, you make it in New York, you can make it anywhere because New Yorkers are very brutal. Their honesty is second to none. Like they have some brutal honesty, and they will tell you directly how they feel. And I have an appreciation for that. I like to see people in their true form. I don't like to see when people put on fake or front and nothing like that. So I like that. I feel like New York definitely has shaped me and prepared me to be able to have thick skin. So when I moved to New York back in 2014, I remember like I would go order stuff, you know, at restaurants and people would be like, oh, you from the South, you know, to make jokes about my accent and stuff like that. And I didn't take offense to it because I was just like, okay, they just picking up on my accent. They see that I'm from the South. But granted, those people, some were black, some were Hispanic, you know. But, you know, now if it was a white person, I don't know. It depends on how they say it. But I probably would still take it as a joke, like, you know, ha ha ha, they're just making fun of Southerners, not really making fun of black people. They're just making fun of, you know, Southerners or whatever, which include white people, because white people got a country accent too who live down there in the South. So this thing can be pretty tricky, y'all. Like, I would just say sometimes, you know, you just have to be careful, especially as a white person, you know, and you talking about in a professional context, like just keep it professional. I guess, yes, white people feel like, okay, well, we want to kind of just let our hair down and have fun sometimes too. And I think that's what my professor, I think that's kind of maybe what he intended to do with this particular student, just trying to make fun. Because he said that he made the statement at the beginning of a meeting that they had for the entire cohort. So it wasn't just a one-on-one meeting here with this professor, but it was like, you know, with the other classmates in his same cohort. He's a third-year student. I'm a second-year student. And so he just kind of made this joke about, you know, trying to like talk in an English accent. And the student was like, don't even try it because you're not English, you know. He just took offense to it, but it just turned into something, you know, a lot bigger, I guess, because, you know, black people do carry this defense. They carry, you know, these sensitivities, you know, that you can't just tell a black person, okay, well, stop being so sensitive, you know, just get some thick skin. Stop. No, like, no. It's a reason why they are sensitive and they're tender. You know, it's the reason why we are tender as black people in certain situations. And you know, we just want to be respected. That's at the end of the day, that's any human being. Just want to be treated with respect. It's just like you look at the whole women's rights movement. Women are sensitive to certain things that men say. You know, women are like, hold on, wait a minute. You know, we deserve our respect. Don't try us like that or whatever. Women be checking men all the time. White women too, you know. So I just think at the end of the day, everybody deserves respect, and you guys feel free to share your comments below. I gotta go because I still only got 2 more hours left, so I gotta make this interview on time. Catch you guys later. Love you guys. Share this video and catch you guys later. Bye.